and Elizabeth City and, Portsmouth and Norfolk and Hampton and Newport News and Poquoson, your problems are going to cross those political lines. The landform and water do not respect that. Collaboration across those political borders is the only way you can deal with this. And I think that's important. And if you take a solution on one side of these challenges, one side of a border, you're going to do one of two things. You're going to overinvest in something that doesn't work because the water's going to come around because the other side hasn't taken it. Or you're going to create problems for the people on the other side. That is what happened throughout the years as California farmers and Dutch farmers built their levees higher and higher to stop the flow from coming onto their water, and they just created problems for other people. They weren't safe. They stopped that by collaborating. This sea level is rising. Those particular areas you have that are near those borders, as the sea level rises, they're going to get more and more impacted. So get the sense, please, that sea level rise is a true threat to this region. If you don't address it collaboratively, you're doomed. The Pentagon at some point may look elsewhere. And if you think about what Paul showed, these jobs, this national security component, it's here for a good reason, but at some point, readiness gets compromised, and the military needs to always be ready. And I think it's important to talk about what Remco said. You can combine your investments. You have current investment cycles in transportation and in public housing and a bunch of other things that you can do things together and accomplish some of these goals and accomplish the goals of those other programs. We saw here, and I want to sort of stop with this. There are many ways you can collaborate regionally. Some are top-down and some are bottom-up. We've suggested the bottom-up route. That's the American way. We want to do it that way, and that's the preferred solution. You have some time, but you don't have a whole lot. Moon Landrieu once said that the land is sinking. He's the former mayor of New Orleans. And when the urban water plan for New Orleans was unveiled, he was a keynote speaker for us. And as I think Paul may have told everyone, he left the audience that day. He said, "The land is sinking, the water is rising, and the rest is up to you." The rest is up to you. And so now I'd like to turn the floor over to the two city managers, have them reflect briefly on what they've seen for their regions and how they're going to go forward, and maybe try to ponder some of this and move forward. Marcus? Okay.
Well, good morning. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Mary Bunting. I'm the city manager of Hampton. And first off, I want to thank our Dutch partners, our friends that we've made over the last few days, as well as the other experts who've come from around the country to really help us look at the new Market Creek system, which is, as you've heard, very vital to Hampton, but also to the region. It borders Newport News, and we look forward to embracing the framework that's been provided, not only as an individual locality, but as a regional partner. One of the things that was mentioned earlier today was the Coalition of the Willing. And I'm here to tell you that Hampton is willing and able to be part of that coalition. You've seen the time invested by our staff here today. We've made some major investments at our local level, and we have been one who has pushed for the Planning District Commission and other regional groups to take an even more active role than we're already taking, because we don't want to be part of the problem in terms of pushing water elsewhere, as you were describing earlier, but we also want to be very active in embracing the challenges that are before us. Many times when people hear some of the very sobering statistics and projections about sea level rise, they get scared. They think about the cost. They think about the challenges. They don't think about the opportunities. They don't think about the exciting possibilities. And I'm really happy that the Dutch Dialogues have helped us to frame that. That yes, we have challenges that we must address. We must be part of the Coalition of Willing. We need to get on with it and do what we can. We have time, but not a lot, as was said. But we also have to embrace this not just as a problem, but as a real opportunity. And one of the things I'm most grateful for the Dutch Dialogues is the fresh perspective about how these don't have to be only infrastructure solutions. In fact, we're missing the boat if we make them only about managing the water. We really need to embrace living with the water. And when we embrace that and we look at some of the frameworks that have been provided, we get to not only deal with the water challenges, but we also get to provide social opportunities, recreational opportunities, economic opportunities for our localities. And both Hampton and Norfolk are older communities. Hampton happens to be the oldest English continuous speaking settlement in America. We're over 400 years old. And that means, as we said earlier, we don't have a lot of land left. And we have already been part of redevelopment and reinventing ourselves. And in fact, the Newmarket Creek, we had imagined some of the things that came out of the Dutch dialogue, but I have to be frank, we were a little limited in our vision. And I really appreciate the guidance that we got to ask us to think even bigger and broader. And that's very exciting, I think, to imagine a locality that can deal with the water challenges, but also use that as an opportunity for residents to have a higher quality of life and for businesses to have new economic opportunities. And that's not just good for Hampton, it's good for the region. So I just want to, again, thank those experts who came to help us. I want to thank the City of Norfolk for hosting these Dutch dialogues. I think they've been very helpful. It's just the beginning. I know of a very exciting time for the region. And as I segue to Marcus Jones, my fellow city manager here, I want to assure you that the city managers already work very closely together. And I know I'm not stepping out of the line when I say Marcus and I are going to be leaders in advancing the regional agenda that needs to happen because we're excited. We're excited about the opportunities and the fresh perspective and the fact that we can go back to folks and say we don't have to be afraid about what's going to happen. We can be a charter of the destination of a more exciting Hampton and a more exciting Norfolk and a more exciting Hampton Roads. So again, thank you for having us, and I'm sure Marcus will add even more to what I've said.
You know, it's interesting. I'll say that Mary is one of my closest friends in public administration and being a city manager. And I'll say one of my closest friends. She used to be my closest friend. Okay, so here comes the story. Until her son continuously defeated my son in swimming. So she dropped from my closest friend to one of my... But having said that, Mary's exactly right. There's a camaraderie, a collaboration between the city managers in the region that is evident, especially when we're together. But it's very difficult to have a friend that's closer than Mary. So when she mentioned that we're willing to forge ahead with the charge, we are. It's just not words. So thank you so much, both the American and the Dutch subject matter experts for coming in. This is incredible. It's kind of interesting. We pinch ourselves to have this type of volunteers at that level of resources that's here in this room. The mayor started off a few days ago talking about this room in this wonderful library. And when Jane Baden decided to make a generous donation to the city for this library, she thought about conversations like the conversations that we're having today. They're not going to be easy conversations. They're difficult conversations many times, and they're visionary. So it's very important to thank the minister for coming today. It's interesting how you talked about the investment, the economic benefit. Dale and David, you are incredible. You've pulled together such a great team. We talk about Team Norfolk, and when I became city manager almost 5 years ago, Team Norfolk was about 5,000 employees. And then we said, well, that's not thinking big enough. So Team Norfolk became 250,000 residents. But it seems like Team Norfolk has gone both regional today and international today. So thank you so much for pulling us together. I will tell you that the Dutch approach is something that we believe in, the collaboration. You've given us a roadmap. I'm impressed, more so, that we did not discount the past, okay? So we talked about that map. What year was that map? 19? 1912 map. 1812 map. So today we make that connection, where we were and where we're headed in the future. And we can't do it alone. It's going to be collaborative. So it's kind of interesting. I don't know, Mary, if you have a city council meeting tonight, but I have one tonight, and I'll take it a step for others being a city manager. This collaborative process, when I go to council tonight, we'll talk a bit about what has occurred over the last 4 days. And I'm going to recommend to the council that we do just that we pull together as a region, because there's nothing that's more important than what we've talked about the past few days. So again, thank you for bringing us together.
Okay, so to paraphrase, they agree. Good. Good. Thank you. Wonderful. I'm just having a bit of fun. I know. So now we're going to open it up more towards the audience comments or things. There's a couple people I want to ask. They've been forewarned to give some brief comments about what they've seen and what they're taking away from this. So Roloff is right nearby somewhere, and then Alex Wall and Mason Andrews and Tom, will you come up so you can give your brief comments after Roloff? So Roloff, this is our crazy Dutch friend who never looks at the sky. He's always looking at the ground and the water underneath him. We joked a long time ago that he really likes to look at the water because he and I love beer, so that's his calling. But Roloff's story about the interaction of all the water isn't really embedded yet in presentation because it's very complex. And so I've given him 2 minutes, and so he's going to try to live within 3.
Okay. I cannot thank everybody who was helping because that takes too much time in 2 minutes. My world is the world below your feet, the dark world, general unknown. The world of natural geology, but also basements, tunnels, fill, groundwater quantity as well as quality, dynamic underground activities like pumping, sewer, storm drainage, drainage pipes. These days, in Hampton Roads, I intend to understand how the land is interacting with the river or bay or ocean and vice versa. You cannot manage what you don't know. So here we need to clearly understand the impact of sea level rise and climate change, more rain, hot, and subsidence on land and urban water. Sea level rise we can't stop. Subsidence we can, or certainly slow down. As you know, one of the main reasons of subsidence in this area is deep groundwater pumping. Pumping groundwater mainly for low value use. Not only causing subsidence, but also salinization of a strategic resource. It's clear that this problem needs to be solved as soon as possible. We need to determine sustainable use, decrease water demand, use more rain, for example. Subsidence, because of that, is in the order of sea level rise. So it is an important thing. Next to the regional subsidence, damage is created by local subsidence due to shallow soft soils and drainage or weight, heavy load. We can see this around us. We need better planning with soft soils and better manage shallow groundwater levels. Keep groundwater levels as high as possible in urban areas with soft soils. Do we understand shallow urban groundwater and its interaction with the river or sea? Not enough, I believe. We often compare future sea level with land elevation, as you could see before. But at a depth of 5 to 12 feet below the surface, the soil is perforated with sewer and storm drainage pipes, directly or indirectly connected with the river or sea, so transporting rising water levels land inwards, but increasingly also transporting salt water land inwards. Also discharging urban nutrients into surface water. Can't we neutralize this problem? These pipes are not only connected with surface water, but as we discovered, also with groundwater. at about 18 to 20% of Hampton Road's wastewater influent is drained groundwater. Storm drainage pipes are also draining groundwater by construction. Groundwater drainage by both underground pipe systems nearly equalizes rain minus evaporation. So groundwater fluctuation in urban Hampton Road is determined by this underground pipe system. We need better understand what this knowledge means in relation to climate and sea level rise. This system possesses opportunities to manage shallow groundwater, but also makes the city vulnerable for urban flooding and salinization because of the open connections with the sea. That is my opinion.
And as we mentioned, Roloff's part of the story will be added to the presentation online over time. Okay, so let's broaden out a little bit. Mason Andrews from Hampton University has clear influence in this region, clear insight into what's happening, and also probably a few opinions, maybe about this, but also about what the region needs to do.
Wow. Good morning. I've been lucky enough in the last few years to be involved with a lot of wonderful people in the region. Most lately, thanks to Wetlands Watch dragging me unwillingly into this intractable problem. I've reconnected with a colleague at Old Dominion University, and we've been enjoying looking at the small scale, at the community level, at what adaptation to sea level rise means. It's been a wonderful experience working with folks in Chesterfield Heights. We're going to keep going and looking at more communities. And I'm pretty excited to tell you that we hope by next year to have a cross-university, cross-disciplinary concentration in this issue. And who knows what will turn up next besides apparently some kind of wet soil. But we'll keep at it. Thank you very much. Collaboration is the only way to keep going. And that's what we're trying to do in our program, and we thank you for showing us the way.
So she agrees. Good. We're on to something. Scoping out a little bit further to the University of Virginia, Professor Alex Ball.
Hi. I've been very excited to work with this group. They have given, I've learned a great deal. Together, we've generated a series of measures and tools and processes which I think can be adapted and used by you. But I was especially excited to be here because I'm definitely got another agenda going. At the University of Virginia, I work in the landscape department. We don't do rose bushes, we do wetlands and urban structure. And I'm charged with leading master's students in the subject landscape in the city. And I picked where I wanted to work, not just last spring, but next spring and the following spring is at Hampton Roads. First, just looking at the map drove me crazy. Chesapeake, Atlantic, and the James River, and a series of cities. And we called our studio 7 Aquatic Cities, Studies in Watery Form. But when we got down here and met some fantastic people, including Mason Andrews, who introduced us and took us around the wonderful community of Chesterfield Heights. We were out in Craney Island. We met with the Corps of Engineers. We went out to Virginia Beach, where they're not worried about sea level rise. All my students pop their eyes because they've got to deal with the drainage. So different water bodies and different kinds of water. And our work is energized by the simple fact that the difficult conditions that people have talked about, the sea level rise, the problem with drainage, force this community to innovate and experiment. That's what's so interesting. This community can't go away because the military's here and there's an extremely important harbor. So there will be innovation and experimentation. So what that means is for our teaching, but I think that reflects, and we're certainly going to take up some of the issues learned in this workshop, that right out ahead of us, what we are looking at in the next 50 years or 2100, the year 2100, is the active and social, is a resilient Hampton Roads, an active and social blue and green urban archipelago. It's an image of a working city living with water. And we're going to take some hits on the way to this goal. We're going to get to that goal. And I think that's what's so exciting, to generate these tools and measures here. And I hope when I come back down this spring, next spring, we'll be able to work with more of you and in our small way continue some of the things started in this workshop. Thank you.
So with the governments, with possible regional collaboration, with some expertise, with the academic community helping to lead the way, we need the business community and stakeholders. Tom McNeilan can represent those interests, but he's also, I think, and we acknowledged it before, but we're here because he's a stubborn man that looks like he's Dutch.
Thank you, Dale. I think when we started talking about this in 2011, we had high hopes that this could happen here. We probably underestimated the tenacity we would need to make it happen here. And we had high expectations of the results of what this would lead to. I believe we've far succeeded those expectations myself. I'd like to ask everybody that was a part of the activities over the last 5 days that spent their weekends here to stand up, please. Thank you. Now, I want you to know, many people this morning have talked about multidisciplinary approaches to a very long challenge that we have ahead of us. Most of the people that you've seen up here standing today have had multiple 49th birthdays. If you look at that group that just stood up, that included those of us that are in the latter part of our professional careers, those that are in the key active part of their professional careers that will be leaders tomorrow, and students, 20-year-olds from the universities and just starting their professional career. So we also have the Dutch Dialogues, although I don't think I've ever seen this actually said, Dale, but it is not only multidisciplinary, it is multi-generational. And I think that should be something that we add to our description of it. And to that, I'd like to thank Mason Andrews in particular for arranging and being the lead on arranging students from, I think we have 7, maybe 8 universities here. Those that don't know her, although I suspect a lot of the people in the room do, Mason's family is a long-time active family in this area. They're one of the icons of this area. Her father is one of our local greatest of the greatest generation, bless his soul, and for your rest. He, in addition to his medical career and the accomplishments there, was part of a group of people that are today, we are losing. They're in their upper 80s and 90s, who in Norfolk were the people that started the process of revitalizing downtown from being a shambles and being blighted continually. Yeah, we can look at that, as David and I have a few times, said, boy, wouldn't it be nice to be able to get rid of that? That's outdated. But again, it served its purpose to start a process that I hope we see ways to continue on a local scale today. I'm not an old-time Norfolkian. I came here, first time I was ever in Norfolk was in 2006, and I remember I've thought over the weekend of a few iconic impressions that I took with me from that trip. Flying in, it's green, There's water everywhere. What a beautiful area and landscape. Landing at the airport in October 2006 when the leaves were turning and crossing the pedestrian walkway from the arrival area to the baggage claim area. The trees are in bloom. Just beautiful, just beautiful. Driving into Norfolk to stay downtown and see a urban landscape on the head in front of me and looking at this iconic ballpark that actually is one of the originals, maybe the original, I forget the detail, of the retro look ballparks, surrounded by nothing, isolated. We over this weekend, I hope, have made progress towards changing that idea. Over the weekend, I wrote down some words as I thought of them during the activities. Cerebral, elegant, articulate, enjoyable. Tiring, but enjoyable. Most importantly, though, I think it's hopeful and inspiring. And over the last 6 years, when we've tried to roll out and talk to people about what the Dutch Dialogue can do, I've been trying to emphasize this is a hopeful story. This is a story of how we can convert challenges to opportunities. For if we don't do that, we surrender, which in itself is a choice. So if we merge two Dutch iconic images, we have to keep our feet dry, but we have to have our noses pointed in the same direction to do that. I'm going to modify that and say, yeah, it's ideal if all noses are pointed in the same direction, but waiting to get all noses pointed in the same direction. We should learn from today, particularly some of the regional aspects of the different scales of risks, scales of projects. We do not have to have all of the noses pointed in the same direction to move forward. Thank you.
Thank you to the pre-commentators. So, Katarina, who really has been the foundation for us through this all, she's going to get gray hair from this. Dave and I were worried about that. But she has a microphone. So if you have comments or observations about what you saw, about what you heard, or about what you think is needed, please come up. I don't know where, or raise your hand so Katarina can bring you the microphone. We have a few moments to discuss this, if you like. Rami has just...
I'm from New Orleans, and this has been from New Orleans. This has been a fabulous experience this last few days, and I've gotten to know the city a bit in the earlier preparations. But a few things that for the locals who hopefully take this forward, the engineers, the planners, the architects, the ecologists, the students, everybody, to remember this layered planning approach that we tried to illustrate today, which was starting with Roelof's world, the sort of the subsurface, the soils, the water, the ecology, and the infrastructure on top of that, and the habitation finally. And always remembering the history, because that will give you a clue to sort of a way to move forward. And finally, these structures that we talked about today, which maybe we didn't illustrate what they could look like. We have a bad track record in this country of making these sort of storm infrastructure things very ugly and not designed. And these are opportunities to make beautiful places, as well as structures that can add amenity and not just protect. So,
who wants to follow Rami? All these people with not an opinion, really? People were afraid. Okay, then that's fine. We're not going to force you to comment. I'm going to turn it over for a final observation or final observations from David.
I go slow because we're going to leave in 5 minutes or 3 minutes. A lot of the people in the room are going to leave the city, the place. This it's not a model. It's a reality. It's knowledge co-creation. This is made together. It's not sharing. It's created together. I think the active there is very important. But as this information starts to disseminate, I spoke a bit with you about this, into the community. You know, it's been said that the community is the critique of desire. They'll tell you whether they want it or not, and they may find reasons to think that they're going to lose in the process of changing or exchanging. So I think that it's going to take a lot of people who stay here to say, well, that would be reasonable, but also we could look at that. Change isn't easy, but in our time, we've gotten stuck. We used to be this country of infinite possibility. Tom encouraged me to speak about this being an American problem. You know, I've been really blessed to become Dutch. It was forced upon us, right? I mean, and you know, the model after Katrina of the only brand that had any value was the Dutch. And I found friends, so I appreciate that. But saying that and getting into the heavier aspect, I'll get worse. Because we're in Virginia. I lived here, I lived off Fort Hunt Road up in the hills, Alexandria, you know. And so this is the old Dominion state or something, right? So consider, you know, that word. Because, you know, it says that, this is hard, you know, I shouldn't always take on more, but it's my nature, right? It said, you have made him to have dominion over the works of your hands. All things under his feet. What are we doing with it? What are we doing, right? It's fragile. It's this life we're going to lose. Dominion? So that being sacred, Descartes, who was a man who took refuge in the Netherlands too, like I've taken refuge in the Netherlands, and was not, I don't think, too religious, said, don't detach from the problem. He said, embrace the problem. He said, it is you, and you are it. So, in my tearful form, understand that this problem is who we are. And if we live this problem, we'll be who we are. So it's a challenge, but it's an opportunity, and it's been a grace to us to be here. Thank you.
That's my friend and an important man for New Orleans. He inspired a lot of us. You have work to do. We have work to do. Talk to the people around on the sides. And another applause for David's commitment.